The Canadiens lose by a score of 6-3 to the Ottawa Senators. The distribution of ice time for the defensemen, 5-on-5, you'll find very interesting, especially one player in particular who drew a pretty tough assignment. We'll talk about him. We'll talk about one Montreal Canadiens player who called out an Ottawa Senators player. Was he right to do it? Was it his place? Another Montreal Canadiens player is set to return, the most anticipated return since. We'll ask Brian Wilde about it. And if he doesn't play tomorrow, when will he? We'll also do a class of math. All of that coming up on the Sick Podcast. I'm Marinaro with Brian Wilde of Global TV Montreal.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro. The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
And now a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup.
Sports entertainment like no other. Brought to you by 8.6 Beer, intense by nature, and La Cage. If the last time you went to La Cage was when the Habs won the Cup, it's time you went back to La Cage. The menu will surprise you.
It is the Sick Podcast. I'm Marinaro, brought to you by 8.6 Beer, intense the way we like it. By nature, the beer for those who follow their instinct and live their passions in order to make their mark. And La Cage. If the last time you went to La Cage was when the Habs won the Cup, that was back in 1993, it's time you go back to La Cage. The menu will surprise you. As a matter of fact, I got a call from my cousin Gina the other day who visited La Cage and LaSalle on the weekend, and she had tuna tartare or salmon tartare, one of the two. Anyway, she called to tell me what she had, what her husband had, what her kids had, and she told me that the menu surprised her. The food was awesome. I said, you see, Gina, I told you so. And joining us today from Global TV Montreal, Brian Wilde. How you doing, Brian?
I'm very well. How are you doing, Tony?
Very well. The Quebec Nordiques. Look at that, huh?
You bet. Bring them back. Bring them back, baby. You know, if the commissioner of the NHL were a Canadian, they would have been brought back ages ago, right?
Yeah. And your favorite Quebec Nordique of all time was?
I'm going to go Peter Stastny.
Yeah. Good one.
Come on. It's got to be.
Yeah. And mine was?
Peter Stastny as well.
Guy Lafleur.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sure.
No,
right.
I think Peter Stastny was, in my opinion, probably the best Quebec Nordique of all time. With all due respect, of course, to Michel Goulet.
Yep.
Who was another great player, and they had several dandies, and the Stastny brothers and his Peter's brothers, Anton and Marianne. Those were the good old days, Brian. Those were
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Hey, I just talked about La Cage. I want everyone to know that the Sick Podcast will be celebrating their 1-year anniversary party. We bring it up 1 year of the Sick Podcast with me, Tony Marinaro, and on Saturday, April 23rd at 7 p.m. at La Cage de Carey on Rue des Jockeys, we're going to get together. We're going to watch the last game of the regular season, which is going to be the Canadiens in Ottawa versus the Senators. We're going to hang out with a bunch of people. Brian, I've invited you, and if all goes well, we will see you there that night. So I very much look forward to that. That'll be kind of cool. A treat for listeners and viewers of the Sick Podcast. You'll have a chance to meet Brian Wilde. And of course, folks, if everything is still headed in the right direction and we don't take a step back with everything that's happened over the past couple of years with the pandemic. All right. So on that note, I want to talk about Matthias Brunet wrote about this earlier on today in La Presse newspaper. He wrote about the ice time in the hockey game last night. The Senators, of course, beating the Canadiens by a score of 6-3, which everyone knows by now. Brian, listen carefully to this 5-on-5 ice time for the Canadiens defenseman. Barron, 15 minutes. His partner, Schuenemann, 15:04. Edmondson, 16:23. His partner, Romanov, 17:41. Jordan Harris, 17:56. His partner, David Savard, 18-23. And as Mathias points out in La Presse, what was really awesome from Jordan Harris was that he and Savard went up against a very competent line of Stützle, Batherson, and Formanton. And they were never on the ice for any of the Ottawa goals, with the exception of the empty net goal by Austin Watson with just over 4 minutes to go in the hockey game. But Jordan Harris, in just his second game in the National Hockey League, wow, he's really good.
I can't disagree at all.
Wow.
He is really good. Yeah, I noticed last night for sure that it seemed like Romanov's pairing was the one that was getting exploited. And because you're kind of, when you're looking at this point in the season and your eyes are on Jordan Harris, what's he going to do in his second game? And what's Justin Barron going to do in his fifth game with the Canadiens? You're kind of hoping that the new guys really excel because you already know what Romanov can do, right? So you're not really looking at exactly his game. So you're hoping Barron does well and continues to improve, because then the footprint for the defense overall in the future looks great, as opposed to even 3 weeks ago. I didn't think that the defense was going to really be very good last year, but now you look at Barron improving game to game. You look at Schumann looking like he's a guy that at 26 has finally figured out to play at this level. And, he's a career minor leaguer, which is crazy, right? And then you look at Jordan Harris in 2 games, he's already looking composed and calm. It looks like he slowed down the action already to fit the speed he wants to play the game at. I think the defense might be a lot better than anyone could have thought. And I haven't even mentioned Gooley, and I haven't even mentioned Mailloux, that are 2 supposed, great prospects going forward. So, yeah, they're going to have growing pains for sure, because it's pretty rare that a blue line that young, Tony, ends up being outstanding in year 1. But it's looking a hell of a lot better than I thought it did 1 month ago.
Yeah, and let's talk about Justin Barron now. And by the way, the duo of Romanov and Edmondson, they drew the assignment of Norris Kachuk and Matthew Joseph. And yes, it was a long night for them last night. Schumann and Barron had the luxury of going up against the third and the fourth lines last night. Speaking of Barron, in his 7th game in the National Hockey League, he scores his first NHL goal. Brian, we were told that his strength was his skating, but my God, he looks like poetry in motion out there. I mean, the way he was able to skate right to left there and go unattended, and that very quick wrist shot that surprised a lot of people, especially Forsberg, and he scores his first goal. I don't remember the last time we saw a Canadiens defenseman who was that smooth on his skates.
What a goal that was. What a goal that was.
Yeah.
I mean, that was just so full of talent. We don't get to, in a Bergevin created team, get to see that type of talent from the blue line in terms of skating. That was the right to left dance, the entire sheet, beats a man. He's still walking the line, and then he manages to fire it into the top corner. I mean, that was one of the smoothest goals we've seen in a long time. Tony, let me add, too, that Justin Barron, I've just seen from the Canadiens tweeting that he won't accompany the team to New Jersey on Thursday. So he got his ankle rolled at the end of that game. And I think that's it. He spoke this morning about his first goal, and he was pretty excited. So I don't think it's a serious injury, or they wouldn't have trotted him out. But it looks like he's going to be gone for a couple days. But no big deal. I'm sure it's minor.
Brian, it's actually an injury that's common. I've done quite a bit of reading up on this for whatever, and because I have boys that play and stuff like that, but they play soccer or not. But when you play at probably the highest level that you've ever played at, and you play a lot of minutes, what happens is that as you fatigue a little bit, the mind gets a little bit tired, and sometimes your movements aren't as automatic. It's actually easier to roll your ankle. I don't know if that's the way it went down. I don't know if that's why it happened, but it's actually, it could play a part in that. If you play at a higher level and you're not used to playing X amount of minutes at a higher level, you get a little bit tired, your brain shuts off at one point, and an automatic movement ends up being a little bit of a roll. But anyway.
So you're saying there's a bit of a psychological element to getting your ankle trapped, that it's not all a physical thing, that mentally you're not at the exact same level that you were, and it can impact what happens physically.
It's a little bit of your motor skills actually getting a little bit tired too, but it's also a little bit of, for example, you playing at a level of 75 or 80%, and now you have to play at 100% right away all the time type of thing. It could have something to do with that. Anyway, with physio, with osteo and acupuncture and everything that they do, I'm sure he's going to be fine, but good for him. And, now my question to you is, at one point, is young too young? So let's look at this, right? Everyone's looking at Goalie, and they're looking at Mailloux, and they're looking at Harris, and they're looking at Barron, and they're looking at Romanov. Can you have all of them in the lineup together at the same time? Would it preoccupy you? Would it worry you?
That question comes down to, does age mean that you've learned how to win? Right?
No.
Because it's not going to be from a physical standpoint. It's not going to be from a hockey standpoint. I mean, if you're a great player, you're a great player.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what age you are. What element of the equation are you lacking that means historically too many young people means losses? Like Ottawa was the opponent last night, right?
Yeah.
Didn't you think they would be better this year?
Yes. I think a lot of people thought they would be better this year.
Why are they not better this year? What are they missing?
I'll tell you what they're missing.
Look at their first line. It's outstanding.
I'll tell you what they're missing.
But they don't know how to win yet. So I think my question is, if they have too many of that ilk, the names you just ran, all 23 and under, will they have learned how to win? Which tells us, what are they missing, Tony, Ottawa?
So usually, a lot of hockey people are of the opinion that you need more experienced players. You need some veterans. You need to add some of those to a mix of a very, very young team to kind of mentor them and show them the way. And I get all of that. The challenge with that, though, is that if you start bringing in some of those who are actually very good players, now you're not losing with, as regularly as you were. And now you're not probably going to end up drafting as good as you can, because you'll probably end up being somewhere, 20th or 22nd instead of being 28th or 29th. So I'm for going out and getting mentors. I'm not for going out and signing as unrestricted free agents the Bergerons or the Girouxs or the Latangs of this world if you are the Canadians and or the Senators, because I believe you're still better off playing it out organically and maybe having one or two more cracks at the draft and then trying to add some of those veterans.
So why don't you think the Senators had a better season than they did?
Because they didn't surround their young players the way they probably should have. But once again,
so then the Habs could do the same thing.
That could end up being a blessing in disguise for Ottawa, because they might end up getting a very good player out of the draft.
But you're saying that the Habs could do the same thing. They could have the Harris, the Barron, the Romanov. Mailloux could maybe work his way in 2 years. Goulie's going to be on the team next year. I feel 100% certain of that. And now you've complemented them with only Savara and Edmondson, assuming Petrie gets traded.
Well, I think Goulie's.
So is the blue line too young? And then do you have a team that doesn't know how to win like Ottawa this year?
I think Goulie's going to play in Laval next year.
I don't. I think he's going to be in the NHL.
Really? That could very well be. He was one of the last ones cut at the camp and stuff like that. But look, David Savard's going to be on the team.
1.
Joel Edmondson's going to be on the
2.
team. Romanov's going to be
3.
on the team. Harris is going to be on the team.
4.
And the rest, I'm not so sure.
You're stopping there.
Well, I don't know what Barron could be, could not be. Jordan Harris could be, could not be. Schoenemann can be, can't be. So, but once again, Savard, Romanov, Edmondson. No, Harris will be on the team. Savard, Romanov, Edmondson, Harris.
You got 4 locks, and now you're looking at Schoenemann as one, Barron as another. That's the 6th going right now. Goulie would be 7. So of those, I'll take Goulie as the 5 for sure, and Barron and Schoenemann will fight for the 6. That's
there's talk of bringing back Chris Weidman, maybe. Who knows if they?
Well, we're going to get an idea of their philosophy.
Go after Brett Kulak.
We're going to get an idea of their philosophy, aren't we?
Yeah, we definitely are. All right, okay. So we have to get to this. Late in the second period, Nick Suzuki takes out Tim Stützle's knee. Nick Suzuki's not a dirty player, but it looked like it was a dirty play. Maybe it wasn't intentional, but at the end of the day, it's the result that matters. It was knee on knee. He goes down. He's in pain. The trainer comes out, and as soon as he comes out, boom, he's back up. And the Senators go on the power play, and Tim Stützle is there on the power play. All of a sudden, miraculous recovery. Brendan Gallagher, not happy at the end of the game. This is what he said in the post-game press conference.
You know what? When I was 10 years old, our coach had a rule. If you lay on the ice, and we didn't have trainers, if the coach had to come on the ice and get you, you're too hurt to play. You had to sit for minimum 3 shifts. He's a great player. Played against him for 2-3 years now. More than half the games we've played against him, he's laid on the ice, and he's right back out there next shift. He lays on the ice. He acts like he's hurt. He sells a call. He's on the ice that same power play. It's, there's kids watching. We're role models. If I was a teammate of his, I'd tell him to smarten up. It's just not a good look. Very talented player, very good player. He needs to stop laying on the ice. It's embarrassing.
Listen, it's a great quote. We want hockey players to speak up and to give us something. Brendan Gallagher definitely gave us something last night at the end of the game, but it begs the question. A, is he right? And B, is it his place to say it? Your thoughts?
Well, put that way with the A and the B. A, yes, he is right, but here's the caveat. He could have picked a better play than that one, because I've seen Stützle pretend a lot. We all have. I've seen some pretty egregious acting displays from Stützle, and I don't think there'll be any difficulty with an argument there. But he's picked the time to say it, where in that particular element, that's a dangerous play. And there's an instinctive fear in that play. So even though, if Stützle would have just chosen to go shoulder to shoulder there with Suzuki, which he could have, absolutely nothing would have happened. But when you have made the decision to try to avoid that and your knee does get hit like that, that's a very dangerous hockey play. So even though Brendan Gallagher is absolutely correct that Stützle has been a big diver and embarrassing a lot of times, I don't think that time he was actually embarrassing. Does that make sense? Yeah, I think that's a dangerous hockey play that scares hockey players when that happens. Now, should Stützle have allowed that to happen? No, he should have met his man and, had a shoulder-on-shoulder contact there. I mean, he created the risk for himself with the instinctive and organic avoidance. Yeah. Now, should Brendan Gallagher be saying it? We want hockey players to talk, right, Tony? Yeah. We want good stories. We're the media. If it's not Brendan Gallagher, who is it? I mean, it's either you say you want to allow all of them to say it or none of them to say it. There's nothing special about Brendan Gallagher that says he can say it or can't say it. So it's basically, do we want these guys to talk about what's on their hockey minds, or do we not want them to talk? And like when somebody says to me on Twitter, stick to sports, I want to tell him to go F himself. So I'm not going to tell Brendan Gallagher what he's allowed to say and not say. If you want to say it, Brendan, like every one of the 700 members of the National Hockey League, go ahead and tell me what's on your mind. It makes for good sports, good hockey, good stories, and a more engaged audience. Yeah.
I tell them, Brian, it's nice out. Go fly a kite. That's my way of it's very diplomatic.
But we all want them to say their stories. So, Brendan, say your story.
Yeah, I'm happy you said it.
Again, though, could he have picked a better story, like a better moment? Yeah, because Tim Stützle has had really, really obvious moments of, kind of like soccer faking, where he's hit right here and he's pretending he got hit in the face. Yeah. But that wasn't that.
Well, you're right. So, when a replay shows that a stick just misses somebody, right, or you actually graze somebody and they're rolling around playing for dead, I'm pretty comfortable in coming in and saying that's faking, that's diving, that's embellishing. Absolutely. When there's a knee on knee like that, I don't like to talk about that, because only Stützle knows the pain that he felt in that moment. Or fear. Yeah, and listen, I'm going to tell you something. Athletes sometimes they get hit, and the adrenaline just carries over, and they want to be out there the next shift, and they want to play, and then it's actually after the game or the next day that they start feeling a lot of pain because the adrenaline has worn off. So anyway, and
right. So in conclusion, Tony, I would say if I were Brendan Gallagher, I would say to myself, okay, I'm telling everyone that he does this all the time, right?
Yeah.
And now I'm picking a moment that actually has some hockey danger in it to tell the world how I feel. If I'm Brendan Gallagher, I could say to myself, well, this kid does that all the time. I'll just wait to the next damn game. He does it again. Only this time he's pretending he got a high stick in the face and he didn't actually get it. Yeah. Then he can win that argument 100 times better than he won it yesterday.
Anyway, even if Stützle does do it, he's a young player. He turned 20 less than 3 months ago. He's got 121 games under his belt. He'll learn. Sometimes you end up learning the hard way. But here's something for you. Matt Larkin of Daily Faceoff, he tweeted earlier this morning, this coming from a guy, Brendan Gallagher, who has drawn more penalties per 60 than any other player in the National Hockey League. I was not aware of that stat. So now think about this for a second. I think what Matt is trying to insinuate is Brendan Gallagher's not the most talented player in the world. He's not the most skilled player. He's not the fastest player in the world. He's not the best stick handler in the world. But yet he has drawn more penalties per 60 than any other player in the National Hockey League. I think he's trying to insinuate that Brendan may have actually embellished on a couple of occasions to try and get the other team penalized. So it sounds like he thinks that Gallagher, of all people, should not be talking.
I don't buy that, because for me, the person that draws the most penalties per 60 is the one that you have a hard time taking off the puck. You know who should draw the most penalties per 60 in the NHL?
Connor McDavid. Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Here's the puck, and I'm going to make sure, and then you get frustrated, you can't take it from him, then you got to do stuff to get it from him, and then you draw a penalty. Jeff Follett, Toronto-based writer on Twitter, very active. I don't know if you know him, but he had this big study that he did. Mm-hmm. And so he was doing who draws penalties per 60 to try to prove a case. And it was some of the worst hockey players in the NHL, believe it or not, which when his entire theory was finished, what you were left with is that the officials actually try to even the game. That they don't, like Connor McDavid was low, and he should be number one. There were a lot of really high quality, talented players that hold onto the puck a lot and should be drawing a lot of penalties and drew very little. And some of the worst players in the league were the ones that were drawing the highest amount of penalties per 60. And that kind of tells everybody that the NHL, I don't know. It's a funny league, Tony. It almost doesn't really like its superstars. It doesn't like high scoring. They drop the penalties. It doesn't like wide open playoffs. I don't know. It's a funny league.
Speaking of which, I think I read somewhere a couple of weeks ago that Hazel, who was acquired by the Tampa Bay Lightning, is one of the top 5 or 6 players in the league for penalties drawn, which now you know why they went out and they acquired a guy like that. Because if you're Tampa Bay and you have Kucherov and you have Stamkos and you have Palat and you have Braden Point and you have Victor Hedman, you want to go on the power play. All right, okay. Carey Price practiced today before the Canadians left for Jersey, and he's on the trip. The Canadians will be in Jersey tomorrow night, and they're going to be in Toronto on Saturday. Carey Price is on the trip. It doesn't look like he's playing this week, but what's your level of excitement on a score of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest? What's your level of excitement of a Carey Price return? And where would this rank compared to any Montreal Canadian making a return, with the exception, let's leave Koivu out of it when he returned from cancer, because that's obviously the most anticipated return in the history of the Montreal Canadiens history, or in the history of the Montreal Canadiens organization. But what's your level of excitement? Yes or no? Is it there? And if so, how much are you anticipating this?
Okay, I'll tell you what. Just for fun, let's turn this around, okay? Yeah. I'm going to ask you on a scale of 1 to 10 what you've just asked me. Only what my question is, what do you think my level of excitement is between 1 and 10?
All right.
Guess my level of excitement.
1.
How did you know? How did you know?
Because they're last in the league. It's a lost season, and what is it possibly going to change, right?
I don't know how you got that. That's awesome.
Yeah, you want to know why?
Awesome.
Because good people think good minds think alike. I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy about it either. But at the same
That's
time,
so funny. I'm cracking up over that, Tony.
At the same time, Brian, if he stops 50,
Yeah.
or if he gives up 7, either way, what an incredible story it could be. Like the worst thing that could happen is that he stops 28 and he gives up 3 type of thing, or he gives up 2 or 3. But if he stops either 50 or either gives up 7, I mean, that'll be a big story in Montreal for sure.
Listen, the reason I was a 1, and I don't know how you caught it, because I'm sure you thought I was going to say 9 or 10, but the reason I was a 1, and I really don't care, is I already know Carey Price can stop pucks. Yeah. So it's just a matter of whether he's healthy or not. So does he need to prove to everyone that he's healthy? Probably he needs to prove it to himself, that he just needs to get through a game. I don't think he needs to prove it to Hugo. I don't think he needs to prove it to the fans. I'm a 1, so he obviously doesn't need to prove it to me. You're probably, well, I didn't get your number. What's your level of excitement? 1 to 10. A 1. Okay, so you're on the same page as me. So we don't really need to see anything. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But it's all about for Carey. Does Carey feel like he can play a game? And he wants to know that he can, so he can have a peaceful summer and look forward to the fall.
We brought up so many great names. I don't know. Maybe you could even get a Quebec Nordiques jersey from sportbuffshop.com. Brian's wearing their T-shirt for all your officially licensed sports apparel. I'm not sure about that, by the way, but maybe you can. And our sick merchandise. Look at the shirt that I'm wearing right now. If you're watching, right? Usually when I talk, I get paid. I like that. I came up with that one myself, by the way. It's one of my lines. Use code 615 for 15% off on all of their items. And for matrixhomefitness.ca. Before we started the podcast, Brian said, "Are you losing some weight?" And I said, "I'm trying." Brian, I brought it home. I've discovered a club quality workout in the comfort of my own home. Those watching can do the same. Visit matrixhomefitness.ca.
Everybody's doing that with COVID.
Yeah, it was a good idea. I have 1 or 2 more questions for you.
Go.
I thought he was going to play last night, but he didn't. And now, if Price isn't going to go here, if he doesn't play tomorrow, when will he? Who am I talking about? Samuel Montembeault. Jake Allen has been amazing. He had 5 consecutive games of 40-plus saves. 2 games ago was 37 saves. Last night, I think it's safe to say, was a little bit of an off night for Jake Allen. Shouldn't Montembeault have played that game last night?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Also, in terms of, like, somebody tell these guys that Seattle and Arizona are, like, right there. I mean, these are 3 teams that are stuck against each other. It's going to come down to 1 point, 2 points. You don't actually want outstanding goaltending. The easiest way to stay at the bottom of the standings is put in an 890 or a 900 instead of a 920 or a 930. I mean, everybody knows it. And it also looks good, too, because you maybe have a goalie with an off night, but your team looks, it doesn't impact how Suzuki looks. It doesn't impact how Caufield looks. It doesn't impact that the team is very entertaining to watch. The fans are smart enough to know why the loss came in. They're entertained. I mean, there's a great mood at the Bell Center. It's not about saves. The great mood at the Bell Center is about the excitement that, Barron dancing all across the line, Caufield scoring again, Suzuki looking like a top 6C. That's what the excitement's all about. So Montembeault in? Hell yeah. Why hasn't he been already? Put him in for lots of games. Seattle and Arizona are too close. I mean, it looks great. You like to come in with a little better record, and Martin St. Louis is happy to win, and there's a good mood. But I don't think the good mood is destroyed by results that go poorly from a poor goaltending performance when everything else is expanding beautifully as it is. So don't underestimate the value of starting the balls turning when you're in the 1 slot.
Yeah, and you know what? To Marty St. Louis and Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon, the last month or month and a half under Marty St. Louis, whenever it was, I think it was back on the 9th of February, something like that. So maybe even almost 2 months now. We've had a lot of fun. Okay, we've had a lot of fun. So if you have less fun for 1 or 2 nights, and by the way, you can still have fun with Samuel Montembeault in goal.
Absolutely, and he might turn in a beauty of a game too. He should be playing though.
He's had some good games. Hey, look, we're going to end it with math. All right. But I'm good at math, but I'm not so sure I could pull this one off without a calculator. Okay.
Okay, go.
I'm going to do something for you. All right. Okay.
All right.
15. All right.
Yeah.
divided
Uh-huh.
by 25
Go on. I'm not following in yet.
times 82.
This is somebody's point total. Oh, this is Caufield's 15 goals in the last 25 games, over 82, 49.2. He needs one more goal for Cole Caufield to average out at 50.
He's on pace to have a 49 goal season if he would have had Marty St. Louis from the beginning of the year. And of course, he would have scored goals at that pace. 15 goals in 25 games divided by 82 games. 49.2 goals. 49.2. Brian.
Easy rookie of the year.
Easy rookie of the year. And now all of a sudden, when we think back to Trevor Zegras telling us that Cole Caufield would score 40 goals this season, and he's got 16. But now when you think of that, it probably wasn't that crazy a prediction after all, was it?
No, and you know what? He's probably going to, well, it'll be close, but, at present pace, he's going to make a 20-goal season. There's nothing to be ashamed about a 20-goal season as a rookie, especially, considering what happened in the first 30 with, one goal. Add to that he's found a real good partnership with Suzuki. I don't think they've found a mate yet to go with them on the. Oh, here, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
I think it's a great discussion if you have time.
Sure. Does it look like I'm going anywhere? And don't forget, Brian, usually when I talk, I get paid. So we can go on for as long as you want.
Awesome. Okay, here's the question for you. They tried Josh Anderson. They tried a little Pitlick there, right? Yeah. For a spell. What type of player do they need in that other wing spot?
They need a consistent Josh Anderson.
So you think that they need a guy who – see, I thought it was Josh Anderson, and now I've soured on that a little bit because I also think that they don't just need a power forward in terms of an F1 who can win the puck, which is obvious, but they also need a guy that can distribute.
For sure.
Josh Anderson does not distribute very well. So even when he wins it, how well is he distributing? And I think that's why it fell off. He had 6 goals with those guys in the first 9 games, and then he had 0 goals in the next 7 or 8 before they removed him off that line. So in one hand, I agree it's a Josh Anderson type, but it's a Josh Anderson type that can also distribute the puck. You've got to be able to pass it to those two too, so the play can continue. Am I right?
But how do you acquire a guy like that?
Slavkovsky.
That's the only one. I was thinking about it. That's the only guy. He is a big 6'4" winger who has acceleration. He can pass and he can shoot. We saw him dominate, of course, at the Olympics as a 17-year-old. He was the best player there. He's the only guy because or else you have to go out on the unrestricted free agent market. And we know it's not easy to get those guys.
Absolutely. And I apologize to you, but it's led me to one more question.
Sure, go ahead.
That's a natural follow-up then. Yeah. Tony, who do you think they should draft?
If they have the number 1 pick, I think they're going to end up drafting Shane Wright because
what if they have the 2?
Right.
It's got to be Wright as the number 1. 100%. I don't think anybody should debate that because he's a centerman who has potential to be, exactly what you need to win a cup.
And I know you can attest to this, but look, we are not guys that are paid to watch all of these kids playing because anyone who tells you that unless they do this for a living, that they're watching NHL, AHL, KHL, SHL, CHL, and all that stuff, and NCAA, you can't. So, but based on what I've heard from scouts and people who do this for a living, there's not a unanimous number. There's not a unanimous pick. There's not a unanimous number 2 pick either. But to answer your question, I'll say this: based on everything I've heard. And because I have some doubts with some of the other centermen available in the draft and they lack a little bit of size. Yep. If I'm the Canadians and I have the 2nd pick, I'm going to draft Slavkovsky.
That's my choice too. Yeah. That's my choice too. And again, I'm somebody that's always been saying that you cannot win a cup without 2 top 6 at center, right? Yeah. I mean, that's been one of my mantra for a very long time. So why am I not going with Cooley? Why am I not going with Savoie? And the answer is pretty simple. How many people of that height are able to play at center in the NHL and find success? The number is very low right now. It probably starts at Braden Point and I can't think of another one off the top of my head that's super tiny and finds success at center in the NHL as a top six. It just doesn't happen. Those two kids fit into the exact same problem that everyone except Braden Point in the NHL right now has found before them. They got subbed out to wing because they can't dominate the middle of the sheet. So I don't like those two centers for the Canadians. I like a big winger that can make the Canadians have a bona fide, wow, number one line for years to come, and I think it's Slafkovsky.
Brian, July draft at the Bell Center in Montreal.
Fun.
I can't wait. You're going to be there. I'm going to be there. It's going to be absolutely amazing. Thanks for doing this. I want to let everyone know, of course, they can watch the Sick Podcast, Brian, on all social media channels, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at the Sick Podcast. And if you're not following us on YouTube by now, please do so. Subscribe. It's absolutely for free. Tell your friends about it. Brian Weil, Tony Marinaro, when they get together on the Sick Podcast, the podcast is sick. Thanks, Brian. Cheers.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by 8.6, Intense by Nature, and Lacage. If the last time you went to Lacage was when the Habs won the cup, it's time you went back to Lacage. The menu will surprise you.